everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Time to go boldly into an unwritten future. Time to make the predictions for 2017. Gonna go through the monuments, the grand tours, the worlds, and breakout rider, and maybe a rider that's gonna struggle in the upcoming race season. If you recall, I did a similar video about the same time in 2016, a year ago. Some of the predictions were rather accurate. Surprised myself. And a lot of them also were wildly inaccurate, completely wrong. But going through that and being edified by my successes, as limited as they were, I'm going to give it another shot. So let's start with the 5 monuments. Milano-San Remo. Mark this name down because you're going to be hearing about him in a little bit also. From the Quick Step team, Fernando Gaviria, the Colombian sprinter. Incredibly talented. Can get over some small climbs and can sprint with the best. Can do the long races. Which is quite remarkable for a rider that comes from the track and is primarily known as a speedster. Has tremendous endurance as well as an incredible kick at the end of long, difficult races, especially with some hills at the end, which is exactly what Milano-San Remo is. He had a very good shot to win last year and crashed in the last kilometer of the race, I believe, or just about a kilometer to go. So watch for Gaviria to be the man of the hour in Milano-San Remo. Ronde van Vlaanderen, maybe the toughest one-day race on the schedule. Lacks a little bit of the glory of Paris-Roubaix, but the Tour of Flanders, a monument, deservedly so. Last year won emphatically by Peter Sagan, but this year on the comeback trail, new team, new motivation, feeling strong after a devastating preseason training ride crash with his teammates on Giant. John Degenkolb, he's on Trek now, and I think he'll have the motivation. He most certainly has the talent, won monuments before in the past, and after a blighted spring that he had last year, through no fault of his own, I think he'll be back for revenge, and Tour of Flanders suits his talents perfectly, especially if the weather is bad that day. Paris-Roubaix, we're going to see the coronation of the prince of professional cycling, Peter Sagan. I think he's going to win Paris-Roubaix, the queen of the classics, the maybe the most glorious one-day race on the calendar. So talented, can win in a sprint, can win solo. Great on the cobbles, incredible in the crosswinds. Bike handling skills are absolutely out of this world phenomenal. And Paris-Roubaix has always suited his talents, and I think it'll be this year that he gets the win. Tom Bonen going for number 5. I think is going to struggle in the cobble classics this year. I have a feeling he'll obviously be one of the pre-race favorites, and I would love to see Tom Bonen win one of Flanders or Roubaix, but I think it's going to be tough for Tomica. Don't tell him I said that. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, one of my favorite classics when I was a professional. I think a rider called Julian Alaphilippe will get the win in that monument in the Ardennes, a hilly classic. Julian Alaphilippe, second twice in Flèche Wallonne, second also in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, 7th in Amstel Gold Race in the past. So the hilly classics are his specialty. He's an incredible talent. And Liège-Bastogne-Liège, I think that suits him perfectly. He's going to take it out this year. And that will make up for Tom Bonen's maybe failings in Flanders and Roubaix. Please don't tell Tom I'm saying these things. All right. Giro Lombardia, Vincenzo Nibali. Back to the top step and he's going to come up with the win, and that put money on it. And you're going to find out why when I give you my favorites for the Giro, Tour de France, and Vuelta. I think Nibali will want to win it, especially since what's going to happen to him in the Grand Tours is not going to be fabulous, and he'll want to salvage a little bit out of the season in 2017. Don't tell Vincenzo I said that either, but let's move on to the Giro. Nairo Quintana is my hot favorite for the Giro because recently he's announced he's in for the win. He's going to try to win it, not go there just for training to prepare the Tour de France and soft pedal it. There's 3% chance in the back of my mind that he is playing the, I'm going to tell you a pure lie so you're not prepared when I hit you with the truth and drop you at the Tour de France. But I don't, Nairo just is kind of one of these riders that says, I'm going to attack until I drop, take it or leave it. And generally, because he's so talented, it's worked out in his favor. And I think the Giro is going to be a second win in the race for the pink jersey, and a great way for us to start the stage race season, the Grand Tour season. He's going to be pressed throughout the 3 weeks by one of the best fields in the Giro for many years. And I think I've figured out why, and that's because Chris Froome is so dominant in the Tour de France. The other GC contenders, I think, feeling they can't win the Tour, so they're going to do the Giro and at least have something to crow about at the end of the season. So I think Quintana will not go there to try to get ready for the Tour. And if we remind ourselves, he was not perfect at the Tour de France, but dominated the Vuelta. So I thought, probably use that template as a way to prepare the Tour de France better by going to the Giro, not trying to win. Because I don't think in the modern era of cycling and so many great stage racers, it's possible to win the Giro and the Tour. I think Chris Froome could win the Tour and the Vuelta, but Giro is a very different race than the Vuelta. It's earlier in the season. The local riders are absolutely possessed for stage wins every single day. It's incredibly attacking and competitive and dynamic, and the pace changes in the Giro are really painful. And recovering from the effort in the Giro before the Tour de France is much more difficult when you have to try to recover. You have a few more days in between, at least in 2016, the Tour de France and the Vuelta. And also, the weather is a lot worse historically in the Giro than it is in the Vuelta, especially since they moved the Vuelta to the fall. The Giro just plagued by nasty weather on a regular basis, so that makes it a little bit more difficult to recuperate from. And for those reasons, I think Quintana will win the Giro, but not the Tour de France. My favorite for that, Chris Froome, number 4. I feel more strongly about that than any of my other predictions. He's the dominant Tour de France champion of the modern era. His team is consistently the strongest in the race. He's focused exclusively on that. He's determined what is the best preparation for that, what series of races, what schedule, what training, what altitude blocks he does with his teammates. And Team Sky is the best Tour de France team in the modern era. 4 out of the last 5 tours have gone in their favor. And I think it'll be number 5 out of 6 in this year's edition of the Tour de France. The course suits Chris to a T. Time trial, second to last day. If he's a few seconds down, or even a minute down on any of the other GC contenders, he could take the yellow jersey on the second to last day. We saw what kind of damage he can do to the riders that are better at the climbs on a time trial. And we saw that in the Vuelta in 2016 when he was at a huge deficit to Nairo Quintana and came roaring back in the time trial and nearly got the leader's jersey back from Nairo Quintana, who had a 2+ minute lead going into the time trial. And so when Chris Froome has the leader's jersey in his sights in a Grand Tour and has a time trial between himself and that, he's the most dangerous rider in the current peloton. So worst case scenario for Froome, he's a few seconds down coming into the last time trial, which maybe is the worst case scenario for his competitors. So for those reasons, Chris Froome is my man at the Tour de France. Vuelta, I think we're going to see a new name who hasn't won a Grand Tour before succeed in the Grand Tours, who has been very competitive in those, however, in the past. Esteban Chavez, Orica Scott Squad, phenomenal climber, exceptional at the Grand Tours, not, as far as we know, doing the Tour de France. And I think after a long, hard season, the riders that are focusing on the other Grand Tours and trying to be successful throughout the season will be a little bit tired and give Esteban Chavez his best chance to do something he's very capable of winning. That's a Grand Tour. He nearly had the Giro d'Italia last year, lost the jersey on the second to last day to Vincenzo Nibali. Esteban Chavez was climbing great, and I think just a little bit of nervousness and pressure got to him on the last few days of the Giro, and I think he will have learned from that and be able to defend the leader's jersey all the way to the finish in this year's Vuelta a España. Those are your 3 Grand Tour winners. And please comment. I'd like to remind everybody to let me know who you think are going to win these races or any others. World Championships coming to Norway. And because of that, and because of the nature of the course, I'm going to go with the local hero, Alexander Kristoff, to win the Worlds for Norway. Great sprinter. He can get over the climbs too. Incredible endurance. We've seen him in the classics, the one-day monuments, being very successful. And I think having the race come to Norway, he will take that as a chance for superstar status in his home country and not let that opportunity slip through his fingers. He'll have a strong team. One fly in the butter, or ointment as it were, teammates with Edvald Bosenhagen, and I think they will work together, and I think that that will give Kristoff the advantage he needs. In the women's race, American Megan Guarnier for the win. It's a perfect course for Megan. She's racing at her absolute best. She has a way of peaking for the biggest races when all the marbles are on the line, for the championship races. So I think we're going to see her win the Women's World Road Race this year. Mark my words. Breakout rider of 2017 and a superstar for the foreseeable future, Fernando Gaviria from Colombia and the Quick Step squad. I think he's going to win a lot of bike races this year. Very versatile. He's had some big wins already, including the Sprinters Classic, Paris Tours. Maybe the most impressive victory in a one-day race. Left the charging peloton for dead with 800 meters to go and held off all the sprint trains, all the sprinters to the finish line in the in Paris Tours, one of the oldest, most prestigious bike races on earth. And to do that is so incredibly difficult. Just the power and the speed required to do that is absolutely phenomenal. So I think Gaviria is going to have a great year, win lots of big races. It remains to be seen what his Grand Tour schedule will be like, but whichever ones he does, I'm sure he's going to take out a lot of stage wins in all of them, any of them, and be a consistent winner throughout the season. Bust. This last year, I thought that Marcel Kittel was going to have a difficult season. It seemed to turn out to be the case. I think Marcel Kittel is going to be back and firing on all cylinders, which is going to make it difficult for the bust of the year. And please don't tell him I said this. Mark Cavendish. I should probably whisper that. Mark Cavendish. A phenomenal year in 2016. 4 stage wins in the Tour de France. Had the green jersey for a time, the yellow jersey, first time in his career for the first day. And what Mark was doing, a very ambitious schedule to try to also gold medal at the Omnium in the velodrome, the track events at the Olympic Games a few weeks after the Tour de France, and then go back to the road and try to win the World Championships where he was second. So an astounding year in 2016 for Mark Cavendish. So it's been very busy. I think he's going to have to pay the price for having a heavy-duty travel year, a very ambitious season, and tremendously successful. And I think that his performance this year is going to suffer a little bit because of that. He didn't quite get gold at the Olympics, didn't quite get the rainbows at the World, so I think he'll still have a lot of fire in his belly. But I think physically it's going to be a tough season for Mark. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he wins consistently throughout the year and achieves his goals. And it wouldn't surprise me if he did, but I think Marcel Kittel is going to give him a real handful, and that Cavendish, not that he will be that much worse, but I think Kittel will get the better of all the sprinters throughout the year. So Cavendish and bust. First of all, I hope it doesn't happen. Second of all, it's relative. Marcel Kittel won a stage of the Tour de France in 2016, which most riders, that's the defining moment of their whole career. The vast majority of the peloton, and even more than that, don't even ever win a stage of a Grand Tour. So, this is relative, not to say it's going to be a complete disaster by any stretch of the imagination. So, be that as it may, that's my predictions for 2017, and best of luck to all the riders and all the racers in 2017. And I can't wait to follow it and hopefully bring some of it to you. If you'd like to comment, who do you think is going to win and lose this year? Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I need the subscriptions to keep piling up. So if you'd like to subscribe, click on my face. For merchandise, click on the t-shirt icon, and thumbs up. Greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot, everybody.